What if the fierce battle over Palestine isn't just about borders or politics, but part of a divine plan that no human peace agreement can truly resolve? For centuries, rulers, empires, and nations have sought to claim this land, with solutions always seeming elusive. But what if no human solution works, because the conflict over Palestine is not meant to be resolved by human efforts? According to the Bible, the ongoing turmoil over this land was foretold thousands of years ago. And it's not simply a political or territorial issue, it's a matter of prophecy. The land now known as Palestine has long been at the center of a spiritual conflict, where ancient peoples like the Canaanites and Philistines opposed God's chosen people, Israel. What if the real reason for this unending struggle is that Palestine holds the key to end times prophecy, with its destiny already written in Scripture? In this video, we'll explore the biblical origins of Palestine, its link to ancient prophecies, and how this region is destined to play a critical role in the final chapters of history. You'll come to see that the battle for Palestine isn't merely over land. It's a spiritual battle tied to the fulfillment of God's plan, one that no political accord can truly solve. To grasp the biblical background of Palestine, we must first look back to Canaan, the ancient land described in the Bible as the inheritance promised by God to Abraham and his descendants. The land of Canaan, corresponding largely to modern-day Israel and the Palestinian territories, was home to various tribes and peoples long before the Israelites arrived. These people, known collectively as the Canaanites, figure prominently in the biblical narrative as the original inhabitants of the land promised to Abraham's descendants. Genesis provides a genealogy of Canaan, the son of Ham, one of Noah's 3 sons. Among Canaan's descendants are the Sidonians, Hittites, Amorites, Jebusites, and other tribes who settled in the region. The Bible records that these groups were entrenched in pagan worship, practicing idolatry and religious rituals condemned by the God of Israel, including child sacrifice and fertility rites. In Genesis, God tells Abraham that his descendants will one day inherit the land of Canaan, but not until the sins of the Canaanites have reached their full measure. This suggests that God's decision to give the land to Israel was not only a promise to Abraham's descendants, but also a judgment upon the Canaanites for their pervasive wickedness. In many ways, the Canaanites represent nations that stand in opposition to God's chosen people, Israel. The conquest of Canaan by the Israelites, led by Joshua, is portrayed as both the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham and a judgment against the Canaanites for their centuries of idol worship and moral depravity. But the land was more than just a site of conquest. It was a covenant land. It was intended to be a place where God's people would live in holiness, follow his laws, and serve as a light to the nations. The land of Canaan, later known as Palestine, has carried prophetic significance from the moment it was promised to Abraham. But the story doesn't end with the conquest of Canaan. The presence of ancient peoples, like the Canaanites and Philistines, set the stage for continuing conflict, a conflict that has persisted for millennia. The Philistines, whose name is the root of the modern term Palestine, are the next major group influencing the biblical understanding of the region. The Philistines were a seafaring people, thought to have come from Crete and other Aegean areas, and they migrated to the coastal regions of Canaan around the 12th century BC. They established 5 major city-states: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath, which together formed Philistia. In the Bible, the Philistines are well-known enemies of Israel, frequently clashing with the Israelites in a series of military conflicts. Although first mentioned during the time of Abraham, their most prominent role comes during the period of the Judges and the early Israelite monarchy. The most famous Philistine figure is, of course, Goliath, the giant warrior defeated by the young David in one of the Bible's most iconic moments. David's triumph over Goliath symbolized more than just military victory. It marked a spiritual conquest, where God's power prevailed over Israel's enemies. However, the Philistines were more than military foes. They represented spiritual opposition to God's covenant people. The Philistines worshipped gods like Dagon, Baal, and Ashtaroth, and their presence in Canaan posed a constant threat to Israel's worship of Yahweh. Although the Philistines eventually disappeared as a distinct people, their legacy and opposition to Israel have echoed through the centuries, particularly in the ongoing conflicts between Jews and Palestinians over the same contested land. From biblical times to the modern era, Palestine's history has been shaped by foreign domination. After the fall of Babylon, the region came under Persian, Greek, and Roman control. The conquest of Jerusalem by Caliph Umar in AD 637 marked the start of Islamic rule in Palestine, and for centuries, the land was part of the Islamic caliphates. During the Ottoman Empire, which ruled from 1517 to the early 20th century, Palestine became part of the broader Ottoman territory. Under Ottoman rule, the region saw waves of Arab, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim populations living alongside each other, though tensions often arose. The modern Palestinian identity began to take shape during this time, with the Arab Muslim inhabitants becoming the dominant population in the region. The rise of Zionism in the 19th century, a global movement calling for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, set the stage for the intense conflict that followed in the 20th century. As Jewish immigrants arrived in increasing numbers, especially in the early 1900s, tensions between the Arab population and Jewish settlers grew. The British government's Balfour Declaration of 1917, supporting the creation of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, further escalated the situation. When Israel declared statehood in 1948, the surrounding Arab nations, along with the Arab Palestinians, strongly opposed the creation of a Jewish state in what they saw as Arab land. This led to a series of wars, including the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, the Six-Day War in 1967, and the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But beyond the political and territorial disputes, the conflict over Palestine is deeply rooted in a spiritual struggle, one foretold in the Bible. The Bible prophesies about the future of Palestine, especially Jerusalem, and the significant role it plays in God's end times plan. In Scripture, Palestine is not merely a geographical location, it is a land set apart for God's purposes. The struggles over this land, particularly over Jerusalem, are central to God's prophetic plan for the end times. One of the most striking prophecies about Jerusalem is where God declares, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling to all the people around it, and in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All who burden themselves with it will be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth are gathered together against it." This prophecy is remarkable considering today's events. The struggle for Jerusalem, claimed as the capital by both Jews and Palestinians, remains a focal point of global tension. According to biblical prophecy, this conflict will intensify in the end times, with all nations eventually gathering against Jerusalem. But why Jerusalem? The Bible presents Jerusalem as the city chosen by God, where He established His name. It's the city where King David set up his throne and where Solomon built the temple, the central place of worship for Israel. According to prophecy, Jerusalem is also the city where Jesus Christ will return to reign as King of Kings. Another key prophecy concerning Palestine says, "I will gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. There I will enter into judgment against them for what they have done to my inheritance, Israel, because they scattered my people and divided up my land." This prophecy warns of future judgment on the nations for dividing the land of Israel, which includes what is today called Palestine. The issue of dividing Jerusalem and Israel's land is at the heart of modern peace efforts, with many pushing for a two-state solution that would split the land between Israel and a future Palestinian state. However, According to biblical prophecy, these attempts to divide the land won't bring lasting peace. They will result in divine judgment. The Bible also emphasizes the spiritual significance of Palestine, particularly regarding the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael. The conflict between Jews and Arabs is often seen as a continuation of the ancient rivalry between the sons of Abraham. Isaac, the son of promise, represents the Jewish people, while Ishmael, Abraham's son by Hagar, is seen as the ancestor of the Arab nations. Yet the Bible also speaks of a future where Israel and its neighbors, including the descendants of Ishmael, will live in peace and worship together. Isaiah prophesies that in the last days, Israel, Egypt and Assyria, which included parts of modern-day Palestine, will worship the Lord. Thank you for watching Geo